About 2 years after World Youth Day, two guys in my parish were ordained to the diaconate. And I remembered 20 years earlier when I was 12 years old, it's like, oh, permanent deacons. And I started thinking about the permanent diaconate, but not very seriously. So here's to the second part of your question. My wife is not Catholic.
Mm.
So um, I was very aware that, one thing is working for the church, working for Salt and Light Television, or working for World Youth Day, or, going to Mass on Sundays, being involved in my parish, Vacation Bible Camp or whatever. But to be a deacon, I thought that might be a little too much. And if my wife is not 100% on board, this is just not going to go. And if it's going to be a wedge in my marriage, that's not going to fly either. Because when we talk about vocations, my primary vocation is marriage,
Mm.
even though the deacons have two vocations, ordained life
Mhm.
and married life. But our primary vocation is married life. And so I didn't say anything to my wife. And then one day we were at Mass, and I don't know what was happening, that the church was packed and we were late because when you have little kids, you're always late. And we ended up sitting in the back pew, which we never did because when you have little kids, you actually want to sit in the front so they can see better and they're less distracted. So there's
Mhm.
good advice there when you have kids, Jermaine. Um,
Taking
but
notes,
we,
taking notes.
but we ended up sitting in the back and it was like horrible. And the kids were like surfing in the pews and people are talking. And it was horrible. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure it wasn't horrible. But then one of the deacons preached the homily, and the homily was horrible. I don't know. It was just not a good mass experience for me. And I must have said something kind of under my breath during the homily because my wife turned to me and she said, "Well, if you think you can do better, why don't you become a deacon?" And I was like, "Okay, actually, I've been thinking
The
about it."
gauntlet was thrown down.
Exactly. So then she brought it up. We spoke about it. It wasn't a
Hmm.
long conversation. She's like, yeah. I mean, she's not the one that's being ordained. She doesn't have to be
Yeah.
Catholic. She just has to support me and agree
Hmm.
to it. And so
Hmm.
I pursued. Um, so
And
again,
then,
this is a good tip for people who are trying to figure out kind of where God is calling you in your life,
hmm,
whether it is something big like religious life or ordained life or
hmm,
even marriage. Um, but anything like, should I take this job? Should I go to that university? Should I, move to another city? Those are questions that need to be discerned. And if you feel that God is calling you, then I think that getting confirmation. So one is to feel the call. So you
hmm.
have a desire. God, I think God places that desire in your heart. So I had a desire. I didn't know what it was for, but I had a desire. Um, and then the next thing is that you get confirmation, and you get confirmation, at least in my experience, from people around you. So your
Hmm.
sister says something, or your mom says something, or your
So
friend says something, or
that
my friend.
unprompted
Exactly, right? So the fact that my wife said
reciprocation.
something,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And then you can explore. So start exploring. So I started exploring. I spoke with the diocesan vocations director, and then I met with the coordinator of deacons, and then I met with and as I explored more, I received more and more confirmations. Again, random people. One time I went to a friend of mine was being ordained. He's a priest,
Hmm.
but he was being ordained to the diaconate. And so I went to his ordination and I was late again. Well, I wasn't late, but I was arriving just as the opening procession was starting,
Did you end
and
up in those back pews
he was
again?
just getting ready for the opening procession, and he saw me come into the church, and he literally like stepped away from the procession and went up to me and said, "I was just thinking about you because I was thinking you'd be a great deacon." And
Oh
I
my
was like,
goodness.
and I had already actually started the application process, but I hadn't told him.
Okay. And
So
this was
again,
after the conversation with your
yeah, this
wife
was
that
after
oh,
this. I had already started
okay.
the application into the program. So
Hmm.
again, it's like I was getting constantly little confirmations like that. Somebody would say
Yeah.
something, or I would read something, or something, and then my attitude. I don't know if this is a good attitude or not, but my attitude was, God, if you want me to do this, keep opening the doors. If you don't, close the doors, and
Hmm.
I'm not gonna kill myself over this. This is your thing. And I was accepted into the program. I survived the program 4 years.
How it's a 4-year program?
It's a 4 year part time. So
Gotcha.
it's at least in the Archdiocese of Toronto. It
Hmm.
depends. It depends on where you go. Here in the Archdiocese of Toronto, it's done in conjunction, it's done through the seminary, St. Augustine Seminary, and it's a 4 year, it's 10 weekends a month, 4 years, so 40 weekends.